Hello, my name is Gigi Dunn, and welcome to a special virtual TED Talk event. Today, me and my colleagues will be presenting our findings from our study on the correlation between pro-social behavior and the just world belief. We will begin by introducing various definitions of terms throughout the study. Then we will go on to look into similar literature, continuing on to our methods and results, and ending with a few concluding thoughts. Now, to get this out of the way, what is the just world hypothesis? Well, simply, it is that good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. Someone cuts in front of you in the lunch line, they're going to find hair in their food. Someone gives you their spot, they're going to find maybe $1 on the ground. Kind of this idea that you get what you deserve. So, anyone who is good will be rewarded, and anyone who is bad will be punished. Now, this may sound very familiar because we already have a modern term for this hypothesis, not really used in the scientific field, that we like to call karma. Now, karma originates from Buddhist and Hindu beliefs. Pretty much it states that someone whose sum of deeds throughout their life is good will have future prosperity, while someone whose sum of deeds throughout their life is bad or negative will have future suffering. Now, today we use karma to say, oh, that's karma for you, when you see someone who flips you off on the road get into a car accident. Well, that's a little bit extreme, but you know the deal. Now, to continue, what is pro-social behavior? Pro-social behavior is literally just anything that benefits something else. Pretty much if you hold the door for someone at work, that's pro-social behavior. If you help someone out at a group project in your group, yeah, you're benefiting too, but that's still pro-social behavior because you help them. If you negate a pay raise, if you sacrifice that so that someone else can get more, that's also pro-social behavior. So it's pretty much any behavior that helps someone other than yourself, including if it does help yourself or if you make a sacrifice in order to do it. So our study wants to find the correlation between these two things. We think that our hypothesis is that pretty much someone who has a very strong just world belief, someone who really believes people get what they deserve, is less likely to help someone who's misfortunate because they'd see that person as a bad person. While someone who doesn't really believe in the just world belief will likely be more likely to engage in that helping behavior, maybe have more sympathy. Now, we are going to move on to talk about literature with my colleague, Zach. Thank you.
So before we get into our methods and our results, we wanted to touch briefly on some of the previous work that served as a foundation for the current study. The first study here is one conducted by Hamlin, Wynn, and Bloom, and the design of the study is relatively simple. So in this study, infants were made to watch a shape with googly eyes attempt to climb up a hill. After several tries, a second shape with googly eyes came in and either helped or hindered that first shape in getting up the hill. It was found that when prompted to choose which shape they preferred, infants actually chose the helper significantly more than they chose the hinderer. This study shows that even in our infancy, not only do we recognize prosocial behavior, but we actually prefer it to antisocial behavior. More generally, this means that moral thoughts and ideas emerge early on in development, but in relation to our study, it means that we might expect some preference for prosocial behavior in all participants due to the prosocial tendencies we observed in infants, but the levels of engagement in prosocial behavior might vary depending on belief in a just world. The second paper we have here describes a series of studies conducted by Abrams et al. Regarding victim blaming and sexism. An important term here is benevolent sexism, which describes someone who expects women to fill traditional gender roles and to maintain sexual purity as opposed to promiscuity. After having participants read several vignettes about sexual assault and rape, the study found that people who were higher in levels of benevolent sexism felt that victims were more responsible for their assault than people who were lower in levels of benevolent sexism. And they found this likely because participants higher in benevolent sexism felt that victims did not ascribe to traditional gender roles, thus making them more susceptible to unwanted advances. So belief in a just world and benevolent sexism can serve as biases that make people feel better about the randomness of these kinds of negative events. So the Abrams et al. Study found that people are more likely to blame a tragic event like assault or rape on someone when they feel that that tragedy was justified. However, our study kind of seeks to extend this idea to determine if people who believe these negative events are justified will be less charitable than people who do not believe these events are always justified.
So now that Zach has talked a little bit about the background research that will go on in our study, let's look at the methods of how the study will actually be carried out. When looking at the participants we will look to recruit, we are going to try and get around 100 Duke undergraduates who are currently enrolled in introductory psychology classes. We will look to find around 60-40 ratio in gender and about the ages of 18 to 23, or a normal college-age student. When looking at the actual scenario or situation that the study will take place in, it will take place in 2 different stages. The first stage is the questionnaire stage. Students will enter the room, which will be very bland and unassuming in order to prevent any confounding variables, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. They will then come in and take a questionnaire, which will assess their justice-related beliefs or their belief in the just world. Once they have completed this questionnaire, we'll then move on to stage 2, in which the experimenter will come back into the room and then read the following statement to set up the dictator game. You will now take place in an exercise that will involve the next participant on the study. Either you or the next participant will be randomly chosen to receive $10. This will be done by selecting one of 2 stones in a box. If the stone is black, you will be given the option to give any amount of the $10 to the other person. The rest you will keep. If the stone is white, the study will end and you will be contacted with the amount the next participant decided to donate. Are there any questions? Once this has been read and the participant understands the scenario, we will then use deception. In reality, there will be a box, such as seen right here, which will contain 2 black stones. This ensures that the participant will get the dictator condition. We will then come in with the box and allow the participant to grab one of the 2 stones. They will see that they get the dictator condition and then be given the option to then assess their giving behavior. They will be given $10 and be able to have the option to give some amount of it to the next participant. This deception is integral to the study because we were not to deceive the person into believing that some sort of uncontrollable event occurred. There would be no real way to test whether or not the belief in a just world had occurred. The results of these methods would give us 2 primary outcomes that we could use to graph and find the correlation coefficient. The first of these would be the questionnaire scores, in which case we would have a value between 1 and 5 for each of the questionnaire statements. 1 would mean strongly disagree, while 5 would mean strongly agree. We could then find the average or mean of these 6 questionnaire scores to then find the general idea of the person's belief in a just world. Next, we would have the dictator game giving, in which the person would agree to give some value between $0 and $10 in the dictator game. The results of a typical participant could then be seen below. For this example participant, the person would demonstrate a belief in the just world of about 3.667, while their giving in the dictator game would be about $1.80. We could then construct a graph for the 100 participants as seen above. In this example, we see a correlation coefficient of about 0.55. This demonstrates a somewhat negative correlation between helping behavior and giving, and in which case this would demonstrate our hypothesis. However, this cannot be actually known until we conduct the study.
What did we learn? The only thing that we can really conclude is that Duke students in a laboratory setting who receive money from no effort of their own are more likely to keep more of that money rather than donate it if they have a stronger belief in justice-related statements. Why does this matter? Well, with this study and future studies, we'll be better able to understand the relationship between justice-related beliefs and pro-social behavior, giving us better understanding of what makes people act in pro-social ways. To further explore this question, we have to ask ourselves a few more questions, like are Duke students representative of the general population? Duke students who are seen as more privileged or entitled than the general population, would they be more likely to keep the money? Are Duke students who usually come from wealth see the amount of money given in this study as significant or insignificant? What if this happened in a non-laboratory setting, where finding money was a pure stroke of serendipity? Is there a correlation between self-esteem, justice beliefs, and pro-social behavior? Hypothetically, a person with low self-esteem that scores well on justice-related beliefs would give away more money because they don't believe that they deserve it. We can't fully answer these questions with the information we have, but with further studies, we'll be able to grow our understanding. Thank you, and thank you for listening to our TED Talk. Remember, if you need confidence, just strike a power pose.